Collin Sexton, he was finally traded. We all expected it. We just didn't expect this outcome. And I know that many of us are disappointed in the outcome. Let's talk about it.
Jazz Smack, your source for information and analysis about the Utah Jazz and NBA basketball. Jazz Smack is a community for passionate Utah Jazz NBA fans.
So what exactly did happen with the Collin Sexton situation with the Jazz? I think there are several parts to it, but I think one of the major factors in how Collin ended up with such low value among other teams is that the Jazz kind of prioritized other things when they should have been prioritizing, in at least more prioritizing, Collin's value as an asset value. And I think this directly relates back to that contract that Jordan Clarkson signed, the contract extension. I think that relates to how Collin was ended up being used, because I think those minutes that Jordan Clarkson ended up getting after signing that contract extension, I think those minutes should have gone to the younger player development and to try and maximize the asset that is Collin Sexton. I mean, Jordan Clarkson, he didn't have any positive asset value. Even after he signed that contract, that there was no positive asset value there. There was never going to be positive asset value there. On the other hand, I think Collin Sexton could have been placed in a situation where at least he had positive asset value to other teams, and the Jazz could have got some sort of draft compensation in a trade instead of having to attach draft compensation. Even though it was only a second-round pick, it was still, they had to attach draft compensation to that Collin Sexton contract in order to move it, and then get dead weight in the Nurkic contract in return. So the Jazz got no positive asset in return for Collin Sexton. And in my opinion, that's inexcusable. Something went wrong there. And I think a lot of it is that Jordan Clarkson contract. I think so many of us were finally to the point where, okay, we're finally going to end the Jordan Clarkson run in Salt Lake playing for the Utah Jazz when his contract expired. And then they turned around and signed him to a multi-year extension that summer. And most of us were going, what on earth is going on? Why? And to this day, I ask why. And I know many people ask why. It never made any sense, and I think it was a big mistake. I think those minutes should have gone to the younger players. And, you know, Jordan, when he's on the court, he consumes a lot of offensive possessions too. His shot rate is really high. His offensive, his possession consumption rate is very high. You know, he takes bad shots. His body language on the court is often poor. His defensive effort is poor a lot of the time. Getting back on defense, making a bad play on offense, then not even making any attempt to get back on defense. I mean, all those things are Jordan Clarkson. His shot selection is horrific. Just dribbling around, doing whatever, no continuity in the offense when he's on the court. I mean, all those things are Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson off the court, terrific guy, awesome, the best of the best. He seemingly loved Utah. He was a great community member. All of those things are very true. But Jordan Clarkson on the court, the basketball player, not so great. And that was the problem. And those minutes and offensive possessions should have gone elsewhere. And they should have gone to Collin Sexton and the younger players. And that was poor asset management by the Jazz and Hardy. That's my contention. I think that most anybody who's watched the games the last few years that knows anything about basketball can agree with that. It just was not the best case scenario to have Jordan Clarkson out there on the court consuming all those possessions. I mean, he's not a good mentor for younger players based on the way he plays. He can be a good mentor off the court. He can be a good mentor in the locker room, but on the court, he's not a good mentor for the younger players, because if the Jazz want those players to develop good habits and be able to contribute to a very good teams at some point in their careers, whichever ones do stay around, if any, then they need to develop good habits. And Jordan Clarkson is not the person to teach good habits to younger guys, because he has a bunch of bad habits on the court. And that's just the way that it is. So it was really frustrating. I didn't want to watch Jordan Clarkson any longer. I wanted those minutes. I wanted the Jazz to be able to maximize Collin's value in order to get something in return. And in this case, they had to attach draft capital in order to move his contract, which I think is a really poor conclusion to Collin's time in Utah. After 3 years, that's what we get. We have to actually consume draft capital in order to move his contract along, which is just frustrating. So I wish Collin all this luck in the world. I don't think he's going to a great situation in Charlotte. I'm not a fan of the guys they have on that team. But on the other hand, LaMelo Ball misses a lot of time. He's missed a lot of games of his career. I think the most games he's played up to this point is 75 out of 82 games. So he's missed a ton of games in his career. And most seasons, it's far below the 70s. He's only been in the 70s, I believe, one time. So he's not playing a lot of games most of the time. And so Collin should have a good opportunity there, even if he's not a starter, to get significant minutes, just simply because LaMelo Ball is going to miss a lot of time. Odds are that's what happens. So Collin just needs to keep his head down. Let's hope he has a good year. I think Collin's a great guy, awesome dude, played really hard, great guy off the court, great guy in the community. And I hope that he has success, because I think that he's a good dude that deserves success. And he just needs to have a good year in Charlotte, and then he can, in unrestricted free agency next summer, he can pick and choose among suitors. And if he has a good enough year, he should have a lot of suitors, and he should be able to go somewhere where he can get time and also be in a winning situation. Because that's another thing. Collin's never been in a winning situation, a team that went to the playoffs. And obviously the Jazz aren't, Collin's not the only veteran player on the Jazz who's not been in that situation as well. I mean, Lowry's never been to the playoffs. So, that's a whole nother issue. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the Collin Sexton situation. I hope that the fan frustration gets back to management somehow, and ownership, that the franchise needs to do better in the future at trying to maximize asset value while minimizing mistakes. And obviously that Jordan Clarkson contract should have never been signed. That extension should have never been signed. It was just a mistake. And if Ryan Smith, the owner, if his personal relationship with Jordan played into that, I mean, that too is a mistake. It shouldn't. It should be about the basketball and trying to get the Jazz to title contention. And Jordan Clarkson wasn't going to be part of that. He didn't fit it. And that's where things need to be better in the future. And I just hope that management and ownership have a pulse of the people who actually really appreciate the Jazz and have supported Jazz all these years, and that this type of mistake doesn't happen again. I think that's all we can hope. So we'll see what happens. I mean, Jordan was obviously, his contract was bought out today, so that's a good final outcome to Jordan's time with the Jazz, and I wish Jordan all the best in the future, and hopefully he can find success wherever he goes, and that he has a good conclusion to his career elsewhere. But we'll see what happens with the John Collins contract. I think for sure that's moved sometime before the season starts. I don't foresee the Jazz going into next season with John Collins on the roster. I mean, you never know, but that's the way I view things. And the Lowry contract, who knows with that one? I mean, that's an entirely different situation than John Collins. Lowry has a lot of years left at a huge number. John Collins is obviously on an expiring contract where he opted in because he could see the writing on the wall in terms of, available money out in free agency, and there was no way that he was going to get close to $30 million for this coming season out in the open market. So he opted in, which was from his for him. I think that was the proper move. So now it's up to the Jazz to find a trade partner for his contract, and with some luck, hopefully the Jazz can get something in return for that, rather than just have to attach more second round picks or something to his contract in order to move it. Hopefully they actually get something in return for the John Collins contract. John Collins, his numbers last year were really good. So, he should have value to somebody, whether or not, but his number's pretty big, and trying to get compensation in return, it's not a simple matter. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about Collin Sexton a bit, because like many of you out there, it was frustrating. That result was just frustrating. But let's hope for the best. We'll talk to everybody once more news drops.